Hello, welcome to Tech Academy from Adobe. Thank you so much for joining us. We are super excited to share with you a nice session that's going to talk about building fast, high-performing websites using the latest, newest innovations in Adobe Experience Manager, specifically Edge Delivery Services. My name is Joshua Young. I'm the head of EMEA Sales Go-to-Market for Content and Collaboration, and joined with me Christoph Loeffler. I think you can probably see him on camera. I'll let him introduce himself in a few minutes when he starts going through the best part of this, which is the demonstration of how to build one of these high-performing sites very quickly in Edge Delivery Services. But first, I'm going to show a couple slides to kind of set the groundwork of what we're talking about here. And one of the big parts of this is we're focusing at Adobe more and more on ensuring that we have an outcome-based, measurable impact with Adobe Experience Manager sites and Edge Delivery Services. And what does that mean? That means we want to make sure that we're, providing our customers the ability to have the highest, most impactful experiences possible, which means really fast, quick loading, speedy websites built on AEM. And that's one of the big three pillars that articulate the value of Adobe Experience Manager, these high impact experiences, which then result in higher conversions, better traffic, better engagement. But also, Edge Delivery Services expands the use cases for how you can empower more teams to create, find, share, and work on content by being able to not just be tethered to a content management platform to author content, but to also be able to do so in tools like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, which is something that Christoph will demonstrate along with his quick build of a experience. Also, we're building a lot more Gen AI into our tools to be able to understand content performance and automate the creation of some content. So there's a lot of innovation continuing to happen, and some of which will be announced at Summit in just a couple of weeks in the US. But this is all possible because there's this rapid development layer that allows you to very quickly build and deploy content and code actually on a very modern architecture. And what that allows us to do is to create these really high performing sites. And we can measure this via Lighthouse scores. And so Adobe is actually customer zero because we've been working with Edge Delivery Services on our own site for a while and can achieve 100 Lighthouse scores, which has increased SEO visits, increases our page views, reduces bounce rate, all of this leading to better engagement. Reports tell us that 58% of visits are likely to be abandoned if pages take longer than 3 seconds to load. So by using Lighthouse scores to measure the impact of our performance can increase findability and improve engagement and conversions, which is the goal. And that's a differentiated value that we want to bring to AEM and Edge Delivery Services. And also accelerating the time to value through rapid development. And this is through taking a content-first approach to being able to develop content rather than a model design-first approach, which is how things maybe had been developed in the past, going through a very linear path where creating the content is done only after design development and models and everything is built within a platform. We want a content-first approach where content development and design can all happen in harmony, allowing for a much faster iterative process of developing content and experiences for customers. And this is all possible via this lightweight tooling that we have in place now. It's the perfect time now for me to stop talking and turn this over to Christoph because he's going to show you exactly what this means and how possible it is to very, very quickly create experiences and deploy that within the Edge Delivery Services environment. So Christoph, I'm going to hand this over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself and take over the sharing here?
Perfect. Well, then also, hello, hi, and grüezi wohl, and a cozy welcome also from my side. My name is Christoph Loeffler. I'm a solution consultant for the Adobe Experience Cloud with a main focus on the Adobe Experience Manager. I'm based in Basel, also known as AEM City, because this is where the development headquarters of the Adobe Experience Manager is located. And I'm with Adobe since roughly 40 years now. So as Joshua already mentioned, and as we have seen in the previous webinar, Edge Delivery Service is really fast. In fact, it's really speedy. and it's speedy in terms of delivery, in terms of authoring, and also in terms of implementation, so that the implementation project. And today we're going to focus on the later one, which means I want to show you how quickly you can implement code websites on Edge Delivery Service projects, and yeah, why it is that speedy. Traditionally, content management systems like Adobe Experience Manager sites typically contain all kind of technology, such as frameworks, libraries, programming languages, implementation approaches and concepts and whatnot. And obviously, this makes the whole thing pretty complex and not exactly fast. In contrast to that, Edge Delivery Service gets rid of all that ballast and relies only on pure modern web technology. That is HTML, that is cascading style sheets, and that is JavaScript. So we are, so to say, getting back to the roots, and over the last few years, those roots have become dramatically more powerful. Talking about powerful, so that's exactly what I want to show you today, this rapid authoring and development workflow, as Joshua already mentioned. So let's have a look at the entire authoring development workflow from scratch. And as a playground for today's webinar, we are using this demo website of a virtual, let me put that over here so that you see the screen, of a virtual company called Weekend. And as you would expect from any good website, it has a header with some navigation. It has some titles over there, some blogs, and blogs is exactly what I want to show you. If you know AEM, that's basically the equivalent to components in the traditional AEM world. And it has all sorts of things. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So let me switch back to my PowerPoint. So, and obviously this website runs on Edge Delivery Services. And yeah, we will see both the authoring part and we will see the developing part. And by the way, here we already see one of the benefits of Edge Delivery Services. We have a strict separation of concerns. This means that the process of content creation is entirely independent from the process of creating the design and functionality of the website. And even better, as Joshua already pointed out, while the designers and developers are busy building the design, the layout, the markup, the application, so basically the whole functionality and the design of the website, the authors can already start creating their content in parallel. But now let's really start with the authoring view. That is, how do we create and manage our content? So the content typically lives or in a SharePoint or in a Google Drive. And for today, we will use my Google Drive over here. And let me click on that to open it. And as you see, we have here some Word documents or some documents. It could be Word if we would be in SharePoint. And we have some spreadsheets for structured content, but also for things like configuration and so on. And also, you know that from the traditional AEM world, we have our language branches. So here we have the Spanish version of the site and an English version of the site. If I open that, you recognize here that index document. Let me open that one. And probably you will recognize immediately that that's exactly the site that I have shown you before. So that's the content source that fuels the website that you have seen before. So we have that hero banner in the background. We had here the titles, and yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. But as I said, we will do the whole thing from scratch. So let's start by creating a new document, and that means I click here, new Google document, create that thing, and call that, let's say, webinar. So with that, I don't only name my document webinar, but that will also be the name of my page. So the page will be called webinar. And then I can start here entering my content. So I could say this is a title. And then since it is a title, I'm going to make that a title and say this is heading 1. And since when it comes to typing, I'm not exactly the most skilled person on earth, let me do some copy and paste. And I could say this would be the heading 2, this would be the heading 3, and then this is normal text, and maybe here a bullet list, so like this. And there we go. Maybe we want to add some images, some graphics. I can insert them and upload them from my desktop computer. So I could put here a banner, and down there maybe another image. So like this. And yeah, that's basically how you author content. We have seen that already last time. So, and now I can bring up this little fellow over here on the upper border. This is the so-called sidekick. This is, if you wish, my cockpit, my command center for Edge Delivery Services. And by clicking on preview, Edge Delivery Service will generate the web page based on that content that I just authored in my document. And as you see, we are here on the Edge Delivery preview page, and it automatically turned the whole thing in this auto blocking, what it is called. This means we have here a title, we have here the heading 2, which is automatically lay out in that way with the background image as a static image in the background. And then we have here the rest of the content. So far, so good. And what now if we want to use, some specific content elements like a component? If you know the AEM world, that would be the component library that we have over here. And this is where I see all the blocks that are available within the website to which I have access rights. That means, for example, here the image list, that's sort of a carousel. I can preview that. Maybe that's a little bit too complex for today. Let's say here this block quote. That seems quite easy. Let's take that one. All I need to do is to copy it and then paste that in here. And you see that this block is basically nothing else than a table. It consists of in the first row, we have the type of content element, so the component type or the block type. That would be here a block quote. And then we have here 2 parameters. That's the actual content, one with the actual quote and the second one which was the author. So I can easily change that to AEM is amazing. Okay, did I mention that typing is not my best skill? All right, and then maybe here the author, that could be someone like me. And there again, if I preview that page, you see that here we have now the block over there, and the block is rendered as it is defined in the website, which means in the graphic, in the design of the block. So it's nothing fancy over here, but that's exactly what we're going to do. We will build our very own block from scratch to see how that works. And to show you how easy and fast and efficient it is to develop that, we're going to implement a block. But before, let me show you that. And now we were seeing the code side of the Edge Delivery Service. The best way to start a project is using that boilerplate. And the boilerplate is basically something that Adobe put in place with the best practices, but also with the most important ingredients to bake your website cake. So you see here we have some blocks for headings, for text, for images, but also the entire engine room of the website, all the thing that does all the magic, and all of that is bundled in a sorry, that was the wrong link, sorry. That is bundled in a GitHub repository. So there you see all the content is there. That's basically the template for your project if you want. So you can use this as a template over here, or you can simply fork it. And let me clean up here. And then all you need to do is to instantiate the whole thing in your own GitHub repository. So that would be your repository where your project lives. And from there, you want to clone that in your local file system for the local development. That makes the whole thing much easier. So let's have a look at that. I already did that. So that's my local file system. And you see that's exactly this project structure as we have cloned from the GitHub. And then we can open our IDE and start coding. So let's do that. Here we are in the IDE, and let me quickly walk through this project. So we have here, for example, the styles. This is where the general layout, general design of the website is. Then we have the fonts, as an example, or the icons. And also, let's say here we have the scripts. This is the engine room or the technical foundation of the website, that does all the rendering, all the magic happens there. And then most importantly, we have here our blocks. And these blocks, as I mentioned, are the equivalent of the components on the AEM world. And you see, for example, here that block quote that I've just shown you, and we were going to create our very own block from there. So, but maybe before we start that, it's a good idea to show you what kind of block we want to create. And I thought we will create, let's say, a webinar teaser to promote the webinars of the Tech Academy. So that's kind of this a tile component, if you wish, that has a title, it has the date, and it has the presenters, the speakers, and that call to action button where people can click on it to register. They will be forwarded to the registration website. So it basically has these four, let's say, parameters. It's structured content, right? It has a title, a date, the speakers, and this registration button. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. So let me switch back to my Word document first and create that one. So let's go over here and say our new, I don't know, call that block. And now, as I said, a block consists on a table. So let me bring in here a table. And as I said, it has four parameters: the title, the date, the speakers, and the call to action button, plus an additional one that specifies the type of block. So we need the table with 5 cells or 5 rows. The first one indicates the title, the type of the component. So let's call that webinar teaser. And then I can start entering here the title, I can enter here the date, and you get the picture. And did I mention that I'm not exactly the fastest typer on earth? Therefore, again, I have prepared it, and all I need to do is to paste that in. So here I pasted in our content, right? The title, the date, the speakers, and the link. And now what happens if I preview that page, if I generate my web page of that, as you would expect, or maybe you wouldn't expect that, but it doesn't look like the block I just shown you. Basically, it's just flat text, plain text. And what happens when I click that preview is that the Word document or the Google document is first converted into Markdown. And I can quickly show you that, how that looks like, by just adding MD for Markdown to my URL. And there you see it's this wiki style notation with heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. That's the normal text. Then we have here our bullet list. We have our tables, which are the blocks and the images and so on. And from that markdown, a semantic HTML is generated. Let me show you that as well. So if we go here in our block component, so far you see this is the webinar teaser block that we've created. Then it starts over here with a div class that was just a wrapper. And then we have here our actual content. So this is the title. Then we have another div with the date, another div with the speakers, and finally a div where only the URL is in there, right? It's just the pure URL. It's not a button. It's not, you know, something actionable or any tag. It's nothing else than plain text, the link in plain text, the URL. And how can we now, style that, format that? And for that, I switch back in my IDE. And as I mentioned here in the blocks, this is where the blocks live. So every block has its own folder. Let me create a new folder and call that webinar teaser. That needs to be exactly the same name as we defined in the Word document or the other way around. And then within that webinar teaser folder, I'm gonna create now a file called webinar CSS. Oops, that was too much. Did I mention that I'm not the fastest typer on earth? And then again, another file that is called JS for JavaScript, where let's say the functionality will be implemented. But first start with the design. So let me show you that again. If we want to access that or address that content, the closest we get is this div class webinar teaser. That's our class. And from there, we need to use relative addressing to get our title. That means it would be the first child, right? The first div being a child of that parent class. And within that child, there is the div, and that would be our title. So that's one thing. And maybe first we start, with the entire block, give them the overall look and feel of the component. So then let's start with that class. It was called webinar teaser, and I will, let's say, start by adding a red border around that. So that means border, it should be 1 pixel thick, it should be solid, and it should be red. And if I hit the save button and switch back to my browser and refresh that, as you would expect, hopefully nothing happens, because this is our productive environment, right? And the GitHub, from where the productive website gets its content and code, doesn't know anything about the changes we made, because we made them locally. But lucky us, there is a cool thing that Edge Delivery Service features, and that's, where is my PowerPoint? Sorry. That is a local AEM simulator that allows you to preview your modification, your coding that you did, and it even pulls in the content from SharePoint and from Google Drive to create a local website that allow you to test and debug your code, and you get immediate feedback on that. So let's see how that works. I'm back in my IDE. I'm here in my terminal, and all I need to do to launch the simulator is AEM up, and you will see that the AEM simulator is launched. Here we are now on my local machine, localhost, under port 3000. You see our website is there available. And if I switch to our webinar page that we have just created, you see this is available as well locally, right? And what you would expect, you have already here the red border around that. So you see it works instantly. Now let me do some magic or acrobatics to rearrange my windows so that you can better follow what happens there. So on the right-hand side, you see my browser window with the local host, the local website. And on the left-hand side, you see my IDE. So let's say I want to specify the width, let's say 600 pixel. And now watch carefully. As soon as I hit save, this red border should adjust to 600 pixel. So 1, 2, 3, go, and you see immediately you have the response on that. So while you're coding, you see immediately how your website, a real world preview of what you're doing, and you can always, follow what you're doing. Maybe that was not that impressive because we only changed a little bit of the line. Let's make something more prominent. Let's say I want to change the background image, and that should be a linear gradient, and it should be, let's say it should go to the bottom right, so something diagonal, and it should start with yellow and end in red. And there again, if I hit the save button, let's see what happens. Okay, so background image gradient to bottom right. Did I do any typo there? Let me see, background image, that seems good. Linear gradient to bottom right, yellow with one L, okay, sorry for that. Okay, now that should, oops, that should be better now. Let me try that again. And as soon as you make things right, you see that it happens. Now we have this nice linear gradient from yellow to red, and our component is updated. And as you have now proved that I'm not the best typer on earth. Let me copy and paste the whole thing and save again. You see I've added some padding, I changed the fonts, and I adjusted the line and stuff like that. But now we want to make the title bigger. And again, if I inspect that, you see that this is our title, so we need to address that. And as already mentioned, that would be the first cell, the first child, and within that we have the div, and we need to address that one. So that would give us something like, so the webinar class, and from there we go to the next div, who is the first child, and in that we simply take the next div. All right, and let's simply change the font size. Font size, make that 30 pixels. And if I hit save, then you see again, we have updated the size of the font. That's already perfect. And like a good cook on TV, I've already prepared everything here in a separate file. So Let me copy and paste the whole thing in our file. All it does is that's exactly what we did so far for the block itself. Then here for the title, we have seen that. Then the date will be formatted, the speaker will be formatted, it will add the word speakers in front of the speaker names, and we have a dedicated class called .webinar teaser button for our call to action button. Keep that in mind, it's a class, right? Here we have a specific class for it. So if I hit again the save button, then you see it's already pretty close to what we are looking for, except for the last parameter, if you want, the last content line, which is still the URL, and we need to format that, right? So let me show you that. It's still just plain text URL, and we want that to be a button. So what can we do with that? So there, obviously, we need now some JavaScript to make some DOM manipulation, and that's always a trade-off. How much do you want to invest in the cascading style sheets, in the formatting, or how much do you want to rearrange the DOM to better reflect the way you want to style and to add decorations? So let's open here that little JavaScript, and also here, let me copy and paste that as well. All it does, it takes that block, the webinar teaser block, that div wrapper, and then from there it takes the last element child. So that means from that webinar teaser block, the last child is exactly that div that we're looking for. And it takes the inner text from it. So basically exactly the URL. It trims it to remove unnecessary spaces and stuff like that. And then it creates a button, a new button element, adds the class webinar teaser button that we specified in our cascading style sheet, right? It adds some event launcher. So if somebody clicks on that, it opens a new window with the URL, and it adds the inner text register now. So that's the text, the label of the button, and inserts the whole thing into our DOM. So let's again save that, and you see that the JavaScript is reloaded, and we have now here nicely our register button. And let's inspect that also quickly. You see that now we have here really within that cell, we have now a button element with the class webinar teaser button. And if we click on it, then it opens. And let me prove that. If I click on it, it opens the registration side of the Tech Academy. So everything works perfectly. All right, let me maximize the windows again. So here we are. And of course, if I go back to our productive environment, right, and refresh the page, obviously nothing happened there, right? So far, everything is just locally. Now, what we need to do is to publish our modifications, our code to the actual project repository. And this is just the standard GitHub procedures. You commit and push. So let me quickly do that. Let me open here a new terminal. And all I need to do is tell the system that I want to add, everything. That's my committing scope. Then I commit that. Let's say that's our webinar teaser. And when I'm done, then I can push the whole thing in the origin. So there are some modifications, some updates. And now if I jump back to my productive environment and reload the page, if everything goes right, it pulls in now the new content, the new data and everything. And there is a little latency apparently. So not yet. There we go. So it got nicely updated. So exactly as I did it locally, it's exactly the same code, the same content. So you really have 100% preview how your page will look like. And again, this is just the dot page. So that means the preview that would correspond to the authoring environment in the traditional AEM tech stack. And what happened is that this GitHub bot pulled in the code from the project GitHub repository into the Edge Delivery Service, along with the content as a markdown. And from that, it mixes everything together and generates the final web page as a preview here in the inner CDN. That's the dot page that I've just shown you. And then if I hit the publish button, That's actually the actual publishing process, where the same content gets replicated into the outer CDN. That's the .live environment. So let's see what happens there. If I hit this publish button, now you see we are now on page, and when publishing is done, there seems to be some latency today. There we go. We are on .live, and now we have here also as well on the live environment our our new block with the same code. And typically what happens is that you have your own domain space that points to that outer CDN so that the content is delivered to your final website. So again, let's see how the delay is doing. If I go here to our webinar page, then we see that also there under my domain name, the URL is available. So far so good. And now the last question and the most important question, how are we doing performance-wise? So let's have a quick look at the page speed and our Lighthouse score. And what does it say? See, that's our web page. It's a 99. Well, I would say that counts as 100. That's within the measuring tolerance.
Thank you so much. I think that was super fast. I mean, it's interesting that it's so fast that you could even detect the latency as being what was slowing things down versus the development and getting everything pushed out there. I mean, doing this that quickly where latency becomes something that slows you down is pretty impressive.
Absolutely. I mean, I did it quite fast because you told me to do so. And we only had 30 minutes, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I love this. It's much faster to implement it than in the old world, if you want, because it's much more straightforward and so much, the lightweight architecture. And it's really fun because it only uses the core web technologies. And that's one of the big advantages of Edge Delivery Services.
Somebody asked a question about, I guess, running code on a server. So maybe it'd be important to just kind of hone in a little bit. Now they asked this question before you went through all the graphs, so perhaps it was answered. But where is this code living? And kind of emphasize when you're coding something in GitHub, what where is that living and how is that actually kind of finally being distributed out? Maybe throwing that shot up one last time to kind of touch on that point.
Not sure if I got the question right, but the main repository where the code is living is that GitHub. That's the project GitHub repository. And to create that one, or you can start from scratch, obviously, but it's always a good idea to use the boilerplate because the most important components, blocks, the mechanism, the concepts of Edge Delivery Service, as I like to call it, the engine room, is already implemented in that, responsiveness and, for example, that that navigation header will be automatically positioned and the footer and things like that. That's all part of the boilerplate. You could do it from scratch if you want, but it's so much easier if you start with that boilerplate. And then typically development is that you create your own local file system, or you clone your GitHub in your local file system because it's much easier to work there. And with your IDE, you work on that, you make your modification, you enter your code, everything. And once you've done that, you commit and push it again back in the GitHub, and that's it. And from there, Edge Delivery Service pulls in the code through that GitHub bot along with the content to generate then your final markup, your final website. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I think so. I didn't ask the question, but I believe that answers the question. My interpretation of the question, yes. Yeah, I don't know if you can see the questions yourself. Somebody asked around Edge Delivery Services and Universal Editor and how these things will eventually play together. Of course, Universal Editor is not quite released, but that's coming. I don't know if you can touch on that briefly.
Yeah, briefly. It's how to say that. Universal Editor will be Adobe's new, as the name say, Universal Editor. It will be not the only one, but it will be one option how to author content. And the Universal Editor comes especially handy if you have both worlds. If you still want to keep your traditional Adobe Experience Manager content and infrastructure and the tech stack, because you have much more possibility on that. It's really the big beast. And if you want to share content between the two worlds, there are different approaches. One of them is using the Universal Editor that allows you basically to both edit content in the traditional AEM world using, that what you see is what you get editing with the components. It So the difference is that Universal Editor will treat these components like some hybrid components that are both components and blocks, and you will be able to reuse the same content in the Edge Delivery Service world. It's one option how to do that. There are obviously other ones, but it always depends on the specific use case and the scenario, how the customer is set up. What are their use cases? What are the scenarios to define what is the best approach? But Universal Editor will be one concept of that, and we will see a lot for Summit when it will be launched.
Perfect. Somebody asked about the AEM simulator, and I guess I can just answer this quickly, which is the AEM simulator will allow you to test and visualize locally without checking your without committing your code into GitHub, to be able to make sure as you go through local tests from what you've built actually renders as you expect through a simulator of what it will be in the end. So the intention is to have a local testing environment prior to committing any code to GitHub.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And I also see another question
please.
for the Adobe documentation says that we recommend the repository to be public. Not sure if that's the case. The only thing is that repository needs to be reachable by the GitHub bot so that we can pull in the content. So it doesn't necessarily need to be public, but you need access rights for the GitHub. I think that's the explanation. I wouldn't be aware that it needs to be entirely public. And also, as said, as long as the GitHub bot can access it to pull in the code, that should be fine.
Can you see this question?
Another question is a separate Git repository needed for each site, or can multiple sites share the same repository? That's actually a very good question, which I honestly haven't thought about yet. But I think also there it depends how you set up your websites, and how you how you concept your entire website setup. But I wouldn't see why this wouldn't be possible. But honestly, I prefer not giving a final answer on that. I need to think about that, or even double check with our BU engineering.
Somebody also asked earlier about what you've built just now is not the same architecture as a old AEM component. So while you might be able to leverage some of the front end, it's not the exact same way that you would code AEM in the traditional sense. So there's planning a transition between what you might have in existing AEM and leveraging edge delivery services is very specific to use cases and how that would work.
That's correct. I mean, the big difference is that in the traditional AEM, typically you had your component, and that component had a dialogue, and then you created your dialogue where people could enter where the authors could enter the content, maybe some configuration along with that, and all of that we map in standard default technology like a Word document, or for structured content we have the Excel sheets, the spreadsheets. And as I've shown you before in that table, there you have that basically is the equivalent of a content fragment if you have structured content in the traditional world, or it could be the equivalent of a dialogue, where you enter your content elements or your different parameters. And in the same way, you have your structured content in the table, so where each row represents a certain value or a certain parameter, configuration, setting, whatsoever. So you have full flexibility, and you can basically rebuild the whole thing like in the traditional AEM world, but more on, let's say, standard technologies, purely based on SharePoint and Google Drive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are basically up against the last few minutes. If anybody has additional questions, or we weren't able to answer all the questions, feel free to add them, and we will respond to something outstanding over email to make sure we can address what we can. There are, by the way, a whole lot of announcements around this coming at Summit. So you'll hear a lot more about things like Universal Editor and stuff as part of Summit, which is just basically a month from now. So do stay tuned for Summit announcements to see additional functionality that's tied to, we saw a lot of this just now with what Christoph, demonstrated for us over those just few minutes, actually, seeing how we can achieve a really high Lighthouse score, which will in turn increase engagement, doing so very quickly, very rapid development, and even being able to edit that content in a very simple tool, as he displayed. So these are the main value pillars that we see, and Edge Delivery Services is a key driver to make that possible. So I'm going to I want to promote the next Tech Academy session that's coming in just a couple weeks, where we're going to talk about Gen AI and AEM with Express and Firefly together. Our colleagues, Chris Whitehead and Chris Sophocleus, are going to be the presenters for that session on March 7th. So please join that. You can see a QR code here that you can scan if you'd like to make sure to register for that. It will be another interesting session. And I think that's going to be the last slide for us. Turn my microphone off. Thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.